Today's topic is on performance of Zambia's economy.
Sure.
What has been Zambia's GDP growth rate over the past few years?
Quite interesting, adorable, and I'm very much pleased to be with you today, commemorating this day, which is a special day for you. I feel, I'm more privileged to actually interact with you. Yeah, now coming back to your question, I think I would say Zambia's GDP profile has been averaging between 3.5 and 5%. The reason why I'm actually putting this in context is that we have a situation where there are times where the GDP profile, in times where it performs, below the projected points. Exactly when we look at the way we have actually been working out on a number of things. Most of the times when the Minister of Finance pronounces the budget with a target to reach maybe 6.5 or even 6.2, we do not hit that number. But because obviously we have seen that there are times where certain economic events overtaken the situation. Maybe a typical example I can give is where we're talking about 2024. 2024, we saw how the economy performed. We had the drought situation. And again, in reference to this, I can also give a situation of 2020 where we had a negative production. Meaning, even when you look at the gross domestic product, which are calling GDP, was not being able to be seen with substantial impact. And that's the reason why we were actually negative from that perspective. So now what I should be able to put across here is that with all these factors put into consideration, what we are seeing today is a situation where we are averaging around 4-5%. But in essence, we have actually been able to be doing very well as compared to what we could have actually been able to see working out from there. Okay.
Is the economy expanding fast enough to meet population growth?
Then, unfortunately, not as fast as we should be able to see it. What we have seen, the population growth is averaging about 3% somewhere there. Then in terms of the economic growth also, we are speaking of averaging about 5%, meaning the small margin, which is a difference, is not making substantial effect. What we are seeing working out in the case, maybe I should also scale down to explain a bit. The key fundamental basics that are happening here is that there are times when we have what we call external shocks. Things that we did not plan, those uncontrollable factors that really come to play out on the economic pattern of performance. And that's the reason why we seem to have all those things now working in those directions, where even when we plan to grow our economy at 6%, which should be doubled by the population growth, we seem to face some situation like the drought, load shedding, and many others, including COVID-19, which actually had to ravish a number of things. So what I should be able to put across here is that we seem to see a number of things from that perspective. And what we basically also see is that it's like even when you are running your own home, you find that you may be able to make a very proper plan of what you want to achieve. But along the way, something happens. For example, maybe you were planning to go to school with your friends. Maybe we are 4 of you. As you are crossing the road, maybe one friend gets to be in an accident. You don't continue going to school, you get back. So that maybe in any case, you also help your friend maybe to take that friend back to the parent's home or anything like that. So it's the same thing with economy. We may plan to say we want to achieve this direction, but along the way, something that we didn't even plan, it comes into play and it destroys our planning model from that perspective. So that's how it happens in that case. So I'm sure you must be able to get 1 or 2 things from there.
Yes.
Yes.
Which sectors are currently driving economic growth?
Okay, so the Zambian case, right as we speak, we've got the mining sector, which is actually a core and baseline sector for this country. where we drive a lot of efforts, a lot of physical, what we call physical, support, like in terms of learning the budget for free education, healthcare, making up the roads, infrastructure projects, and all those things. The mine is what supports all these factors. So that is what is actually making a strong base in terms of our performance, in terms of everything else as well. Then there are also some other complementary sectors of the economy, like agriculture, tourism, manufacturing. All these are also complementing to the cause of what the mining sector is doing. So that's what I can be able to say, that with the pack of sectors for the economic drive, these are the ones that are actually even being earmarked even our national development goals or plan, to see that we can also start nourishing with the good policy that should be able to incentivize all the aspect of what we are able to do. I know some of the language may be able to be far beyond you, but I'm sure I'm also trying to motivate you to say, look, this is what you should also be able to look into as a career path line. But now, coming back to the subject, the key factor here is that the mining sector is what is even helping us even to see the Kwacha perform very well. The healthcare support is supposed to be there. The CDF, all these that we see, those are the key factors that the mining is able to contribute on the table, among others as well. And much more, we have also identified that there are also some other sectors that are emerging, like the use of phones, the internet, and all that. That's what we call IT sector or ICT sector, which is also coming with that speed as well, making up the whole case as well to complement what is happening in the economy. So the economy now is picking up emerging sectors as well, such as IT and a few others, even including now we're talking of gaming business, where people are now doing some bit of gaming exercise and all those things, also contributing roughly also in a bit, where even the government now has even introduced a 10% tax for those that are actually basically winning. And even just when you look at the whole scenario of what we are seeing, Zambia agriculture also is doing very well, but we need now to start now going down into making food out of what we are producing from their agriculture farms and many other fields from there. So that's what we should be able to see taking with that positive development with regards to sectors that are posed to be doing very well in Zambian case.
All right. How resilient is Zambia's economy to global shocks?
Very, very, very good question, and I like it, and I would love to explain to you with a lot of good points. Zambia at the current level, as I mentioned, is having dominance on the copper production. Copper growth production is what is making the case even as we speak today. So as to make a resilient model around the performance in linking it to global system, we need to make sure that we diversify our export market, meaning we do not just depend on copper alone. We need now to bring other sectors to also start giving birth to some positive development, meaning what we need to see is the situation where the copper should be amongst the complementary export as well, where we have what we call non-traditional export products. Like the product that we are seeing in front of us, we are basically manufacturing within our country. Take this to Malawi, they will be able to sell, they'll bring in some cash for Zambia. Take it to Congo, they will sell, they'll bring in some cash. So that's what we need now to do to upscale our local production or local processing, so that we can be able to actually make good out of what we are producing from other sectors other than the mining. Right now, we should also speak of making our policies. Government has a policy framework which it works to, promote business, trade and commerce and all those stuff. So if we can have a frame and structured the policy framework, it should be able to help us to stand tall, meaning we can now sustain our way of life and do things in light perspective. So that's what we need to do to remain resilient, and also to be risky managers as well in terms of what we see in the global market. Those changing and developing patterns of our economic events, we need to make sure that we also be accustomed to some of these things and make sure that we are forthcoming to the issues that we see, coming suddenly from that perspective. So meaning we need to be aware of what is happening as the trending factors. For example, we've got what we call geopolitical tensions. If we've got friends who are fighting there, let's say where we even saw some key commodities like fuel and many others, we need to start now looking at how best can we mitigate some of those, or maybe find some other sources that we can actually be able to get those stuff that we get from there, so that we do not just get choked. It's like when you've got a friend at school who actually provides you something. For example, you come with some bakery stuff, that person comes with maybe juices and all that. So if you seem to have a problem with the person who supplies juices and you are not in talking terms, for example, I'm just giving it as a small example that you can understand, you find a way to get that juice somewhere else. But I'm not saying you a boy, a man, no, but I'm just speaking that line so that you can understand what I'm talking about. If the source is cut off because there is problem there on the source, you find another source where you can get those items. That's what I mean now for us as Zambia, to make sure that we have an alternative source of supply for oil and all that. If Ukraine and Russia are fighting, if you find maybe where you sell your copper there are a lot of chaotic issues, you can also find another alternative source where you can be offloading your raw materials. So it's important that we need to look at risk management model, which should be able to help us and change things from that perspective.
All right. What is the current inflation rate, and is it rising or falling?
The current inflation rate is standing at 7.5%. It has been getting down, meaning falling, the way you said. So the reason why it has been getting to this level is because of the perfect and the positive development that we have actually been able to record, where the macroeconomic framework, which we call macroeconomic framework, how I may be able to explain this down is that when the government is in power, or even just the whole Zambian economy has a lot of factors that need to be put in place to assess our performance and also to see what we can do. So there are two things that happens there. There is what we call microeconomic environment. The macroeconomic environment is where you're talking of issues to do with the government policies, government affair issues, labor numbers, and all those things, even including now issues to do with inflation, exchange market, interest rate, and all those factors. Then the micro aspect is where you talk about the companies, talk about individuals, you talk about household, you talk about all those things. So now when you see the macroeconomic environment is taken with some positive elements, like the inflation is going downward, the exchange market is performing in a stabilized manner, then the interest rate also is manageable in a way. Those are things that are now even making the case to be. So what has made the interest rate to go down are issues of, one, a strong export market, which we are cultivated, where copper is actually being offloaded and it's making a return into Zambia through the effect of the forex market, where kwacha is appreciating. When kwacha is appreciating, it means we are also lowering inflation component. But in the case where inflation is trending as at now, it's a case to do with the food component that we are harvesting from agriculture. Right now, we are in the period where we are eating fresh maize, we are eating fresh vegetables and all that. So that has really helped us now to see where the inflation is coming down, because the food items are in abundance. And that is the reason why the inflation with the with the food inflation component is much more bigger on the inflation composition. It occupies about 50%. And that's one reason why it has even made a substantial impact of reduction by 1.9%. And maybe we may also ask to say how sustainable it is to have this inflation movement. It's a issue to do now with one. We need to look at what we call post-harvest activities. If we contend with the food inflation component as we speak, maybe a bit longer, even when we have heavy harvest or good harvest output, we should be able to see that we can now sustain this inflation movement for a bit more longer. Then when you look at the government side also, government should not just wake up every day to say we want to do this, we want to do that. Government should have what we call fiscal discipline. Just like the way the discipline name suggests to say you have to contain, you have to do things in the right way and perfect order. So it's the same with what we're talking about, where government should not jump on policies to say today we are going to work on this, tomorrow it's this. There must be a way where they should let certain policies should be able to give what we call effect, in terms of actions, in terms of results, in terms of objectives. So if that is contained or that is maintained, it will be able to give us something that will stand a good test of time and good result from that matter. Then when you look at the whole scenario around the macroeconomic environment, which I've explained to you, if we basically make things light and we do the correct way, we'll be able now to see that this can be sustained. But again, the one important aspect which we call, or which may be classified as a risk factor, it's the issue to do with elections. If we basically do a proper and credible elections in the case of Zambia's governance, then we'll be able now to see that this inflation which has been fading down or getting down will be able to be sustained and will be reasonable for us to actually meet up the expenditure and the consumer expectations.
How is inflation affecting ordinary households?
So inflation, it's maybe I would even put it to say, for you to understand, inflation is a poor man's tax. So if we have inflation scaling up or going upward, it means we are killing the less privileged people because they won't be able to meet the expectation in the consumer's basket. Meaning when they go to the market there, they will find that the goods that they bought at maybe say 10 kwacha yesterday, tomorrow goes up by maybe a small percentage of maybe say 2 or 3%, which will be around 13 kwacha. They are planning right from home. They plan to say they want to buy that item. For example, even buying fruit canna. Fruit canna is sold mostly maybe at 8 kwacha, but because of the inflation, it starts going at 10 kwacha. The next time it goes at 12 kwacha, it goes at 13 kwacha. That affects what we call disposable income. Disposable income comes in when you have got extra money that you want to like use here and there, and usually also it can help you to get into saving appetite. And much more also that we can see from there. So inflation affects massively on the people's pocket, meaning it's something that really disturbs even your planning, disturbs your income generation capacity, destroys a number of things. Even when it comes to government also, there are times when government plans to say they want to buy that machine. That machine is costing about 1 million. If inflation starts going upward, that machine will start costing about 1.4 million. The 400 will be an extra, which will be a cost to government. That extra is a cost. It's the same thing with an household. When you plan for 8 kwacha fruit canna, then the fruit canna goes up by 4 kwacha. That 4 kwacha is a cost to you. It means you spend a bit more, and that's the effect which comes there.
All right. How has fuel and electricity pricing impacted businesses?
Fuel is a very important commodity which drives the economy. It drives even individuals' activities, just like the way we are talking here. For you and myself to be here on set, we had to use some form of fuel or some form of transport, and that transport was using fuel. So fuel is something that gets to go through different sectors of the economy, and even for us to have Rutkana, maybe fuel was involved. In fact, not only issues of saying maybe, fuel definitely was involved, because it has to be transported. If there was no power, they were using fuel to run the production through the genset and few other machinery. So fuel is what we call as a basal factor, something that sits right in the center of all the production, even when it comes to service industry, where we are just doing trading, like we've come here, this is service, we are not having any tangible product. So that is how fuel interplays. Now, when you come to electricity, it drives the economy as well, in terms of upscaling the production, ensuring that the economy is running on blood life. The aspect of energy in totality is something that is very important for us to see the economy thriving. Otherwise, the mining cannot be able to perform without power, which is energy. Or it cannot be performed without transporting, which is fuel. It cannot be performed without any of these liquefied gas. So it's important that we should also put this right on the chest of attention. That even one day when you become a president or whoever, you should make sure that the energy sector is well taken care of, and also put a lot of attention toward it, and making sure that we do the best out of this situation. Especially when you know that fuel and electricity is as important as just like your life. So it's supposed to be taken care of from that perspective. Just like the oil, we take care of agriculture, you take care of fuel. If anything, these are interlinked as well. You may find that fuel may actually make inflation to be more cheaper. In fact, if I were even just to, maybe if you give me more time, what I can even say here is that when you just get back even to the case of inflation, you asked me a question, you will find that fuel as being a contributor to the reduction of inflation, which we are seeing. It's occupying a percentage of about 0.4%, actually 0.3%. Then when you look at the forex market, which we call kwacha-dollar relationship, it has occupied about 0.4%. Then the food inflation is where we are seeing now having 1%. So that 1.9%, which I mentioned, it's coming from all these compositions. So in the case of what is all this happening, we have fuel as a key essential commodity as well.
Right. What measures are being taken to stabilize prices of essential goods?
We understand very well that it's not everyone that is able to manage in the economy such as Zambia. There are times, as I mentioned, our economic growth profile has been swinging or fluctuating, where at some point it has been seeing positive, where it has been having something that I mentioned of 5%. I'm sure you're able to follow what I'm trying to talk about here, and you are also connecting my discussion from there. So the 5%, it's times when we have actually been able to perform with a positive attitude or positive development in that sense. So now what has been happening in the case is that Zambia has realized to say, even if we are growing with this percentage, it's not everyone who's being carried along. There must be some interventions that we need to put in place to ensure that we take care of the most vulnerable people just on the ground. So there has been an intervention, and on the budget, national budget for Zambia, there is a column that really talks about social protection, which I'm sure you have heard of, something like social cash transfer, cash for work, FISIPO, youth empowerment. All those are measures and the social empowerment benefit factors that have actually been put in place to cushion the effect from people that are suffering. And much more, there are also interventions that the government has put in place by moderating or checking from time to time, making a review on fuel, making sure that fuel does not just go out of the roof, meaning we need to contain the pricing, what we call pricing matrix or pricing index for most of these products, meaning within a certain set of pricing, everyone can be able to have at least a share of the burden in terms of buying maybe that fuel, like the way it has reduced by 5% for this particular month. We are talking of those issues to say, look, if we can intervene in some of the critical commodities which are cut closing, then we should be able to at least mitigate or help out in those areas. So that's what actually has been happening from there. So by and large, what I should be able to say is that there are a lot of social interventions that the government does directly through line ministries like community ministry, agriculture ministry, even other ministries that are also linked to some of the people that are quite vulnerable. And even some empowerment, as we see, where CDF has been ballooned. CDF started with very small, with about 1.6 million Zambian kwacha. Today we're talking about something near 40 million Zambian kwacha, which is quite an important aspect. But we are seeing developing at grassroots level, ensuring that we also make sure people are being uplifted from wherever they are. So every corner of this country, in Zambia, we've got people that are now being taken care of from that perspective through the representation of parliament, where the member of parliament have got allocation to spend and to also help uplift those people that have got burden. And much more, the government has put up education standard, which is now commanding free education, where we are seeing that my parents or your parents or everyone's parents is not spending to school, buying school fees or paying for school fees and buying things from there. So we have seen those interventions now to help mitigate the poor people from having more burden on other things like buying mini meal or whatever it is. So at least they have been given a leeway to actually remove that burden as well, to just ensure that their contentment of what they should be able to spend is lying in place. Because if you are not spending on your children for education, then it means that money stands to service other things as well.
All right. What is the current unemployment rate, especially among youths?
Okay, so we understand very well that the country has got about 5% composed of a youth group, which in any case, Zambia is standing at a point which we call 5% of democratic dividend. This democratic geographic dividend, it basically gives a position where the movement of years, for example, maybe our age has gone past that, but what I should be able to put it that the number of youth are the ones that are basically commanding in good numbers. And what we are seeing in terms of the total population level of working class, we're talking about 10 million right now. 10 million is readily available for service, for labor in particular. So now when you look at the national labor statistic, we are talking of about 4 million people in informal employment right as we speak. That now leaves a gap of about 6 million people not in employment. So that's what it is right now. But again, there can also be mitigation that can actually be able to be put in place. And how certain things are working out from there is that we are promoting enterprise development to ensure that those that are not working or those that should be able to be capable of doing some things, there are things like credit guarantee schemes, there are flexible loans that are now being put in place, there are social empowerments, there are a lot of other mitigations that are being put in place as well, just to see that we can make a strong, effective balance in terms of what we see. And much more, there is also issues to do with social